Hello and welcome to a new interview from MinnMax. MinnMax is a place about games, friends, and getting better. My name is Ben Hansen. Thank you for being here. Today's interview, it's been a long time coming. This is with Brandon Jones, the founder of Game Trailers. I promise you've heard his voice on 1 million different reviews for games. He's done so much VO for reviews throughout his career. Game Trailers era, then the Easy Allies era. He was there for 6 years, but left this year to officially retire, to check out of the content creation scene. So this interview is a little bit different. It's a little more casual. It's diving into the weeds, into content creation, Easy Allies, what it's like to, I want to say throw in the towel, but in a positive way, to retire as a champion. Is that maybe a better way of framing it for Jones there? So if you're interested in the history of Easy Allies, or you just want to know what is it like to be on the other side of a Patreon and run that for 6 years, this is the interview for you. And just to let you know, Easy Allies is still pumping out a lot of great content with a wonderful crew over there, so you can always check them out on YouTube or go support them on Patreon. I'm sure they'd appreciate it. You can subscribe to MinnMax's YouTube channel if you enjoy the interview. We appreciate that. Or you can help support it directly by going to patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. 2 N's, of course. There are links everywhere you look on YouTube for this thing. And over there, you can unlock the podcast version of this discussion and all of our other interviews that we've done and a bunch of other benefits. We'd appreciate the support directly. Also, if you're watching this and you want even more Brandon Jones, you can always check out the deepest dive on Batman Arkham Asylum we did here at MinnMax with Mr. Jones himself. It is the best, most thorough discussion about the beloved Batman game on the internet, so please enjoy that. Any help spreading the word about MinnMax is appreciated, but without further ado, here's Brandon Jones. Jeff Gerstmann, welcome to MinnMax. So glad to finally have you here.
A Jeff Gerstmann impression, that I have never worked on. Where would you even start?
Yeah, it seems, here's my Jeff Gerstmann impression. It's kind of like a sigh and then go, yeah, I don't know. He does that a lot. As like his pause before he starts gearing up and really thinking about something in a big way. He's
got some of the best deadpan in the industry. Like my favorite Jeff is just like he can make himself look so gosh darn unhappy, but he just loves game. He loves games so much, and he loves the biz. Really good guy. One of absolutely, looking back on a long storied history, one of the best.
That's right. But no, the point is, this isn't Jeff Gerstmann, everybody. This is Brandon Jones from Easy Allies. It's been a while of trying to wrangle you for a quote unquote exit interview for after you left Easy Allies.
It's been a bit. I was saying beforehand, like, please don't ask me anything about headlines. Don't ask me anything about whatever early summer gaming, whatever we got. It's piecemeal.
Yeah. What is your life like these days? How you feeling in this new retired era? You're sticking with that term, retired, officially.
Yeah, it's funny. My therapist doesn't like the word retired, and I told her I'm like, well, it actually is pretty serious if you think about it in the Blade Runner sense. Then it gets really dark. But just gaming in general, like I'm totally tuned out of. Still doing a little bit of gaming. Had to get Indiana Jones in Fortnite, playing a little Final Fantasy 14 online.
Ooh.
But I'm in. On one hand, I'm pursuing a career in writing. I can write some books, write some books for the little ones, some books for some novels. Taking actually an elective like writing course right now in college, which I promised myself I would never go back to school. And
that sounds fun.
I was like, I don't know anything about this. I really gotta, for all the writing we do, I was like, I don't know how to write, really.
No. Well, was that always part of the plan? Was you wanted to go back to school a little bit?
Well, I was a film major, and so like just storytelling was always just like my passion, and got to do it through my work. When we're telling stories right now, it's just kind of part of it.
It's not. No, we're not storytellers. Nope. You can't get away with that.
My goal is to talk so much more than you do during this interview, Hansen. But yeah, it's just nice to kind of put my money where my mouth is, and never too late. And then the other thing is I'm kind of caught in between this interesting, I'm the responsible one in between my son, who had a really hard year due to illness, and my father, who has dementia, and we just put in a home this week. And so I'm kind of like, let's try to get the three of us together as much as we can while we still can. And I had planned to do that like last year. It's been like 13 months before I like really made the call. Like, okay, I think my career in games is wrapping up, and then just all this other stuff happened. So it was like, okay, I feel even better about the decision.
Yeah, and it just felt like with all these things shifting, it felt like phasing into a new era of your life. And part of that was like, all right, time to say goodbye to Easy Allies.
The biggest regret. Well, I'm still doing VO, still
right.
technically I'm freelance. I get paid for stuff. We got a plug. We got a $100 tier over on the Patreon there, where I'll read whatever within reason. There are guidelines.
Have you had to say no yet once?
No, everybody's been amazing. Somebody on Twitter was like, cool. He's like, I might ask you to say something mocking. And I was like, well, it depends on who I'm mocking. He's like, me. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, please.
My name is Joe Biden. I don't know.
Send it on over. Yeah. Ben Hansen's the only one that I will speak ill of. No, really, it was when you reached out to me to be on this was the only regret that I had for retiring. I was like, oh, I'm practically signing up for that. Basically, I have to do this now.
Yeah. And now
There's no way to weasel out of it.
It's extra weird timing because I know you haven't been following gaming news, but I don't know if you heard this, that one Ben Moore is leaving Easy Allies.
Well, that's the thing. I'm still hanging around. Like, shout out to Brad Ellis, who's picking up his frame trap duties.
For sure.
Are really the only podcast that matters. But like this, our great gaming discussion. There's so many games I played just to be on that podcast. And so now I'm like, now that he's on, I really want to go and support him. But I'm still doing VO. I'm still going to appear like maybe on a podcast here or there, just like pop into a group stream when I can. But like Ben's moving. He's and he's like so crazy passionate about games and passionate about the industry. And so that was a shocker.
Yeah.
But he, as much as I love the guy, I'm born and raised in California, born and raised in LA. I love this city. I accept all of its faults. And I don't want to speak for him, but that guy just did not like LA.
Yep.
That guy,
I get it.
He's going back home with his fam. I bet he's like, no more traffic, no more pollution, no more, I'm sure he weighed all of his options and was like, yeah, I think it's time to, it's a tough town.
Yeah. Now he can start Iowa Max out there, I think, out in this beautiful homestay. Are you still doing VO for Easy Allies? Are you so kind of checked out or moved on to the next phase strategically that with the announcement of Ben Moore leaving, do you automatically go into like Easy Allies mindset of like, okay, how do you message this? How do we talk to the community about this? Or was it just bizarre to realize that like, oh, I don't have to jump in that ring and calm people down?
Because I'm still on Slack. And so it's there have been so many changes. So, we shout out to Gabby, our new community manager, which we hadn't had for 6 years. We were all like basically poor community managers. It's like, we kind of share that job, and we always talked about it. And then with my departure, it was like, well, here's a salary that we can take and, give to someone, whether they're remote or whether they're actually, they can come into the studio. And so when Gabby came on, it was like tempted to like message Bloodworth and be like, wait, I'm not involved in this. It's like how I'm like putting myself in his shoes, and it was like, I wouldn't want, Bossman or somebody else to come in. It was like, well, how are we approaching this? Like, what do you think was this we? So it has been weird to, to kind of check in. Like, I found out, Brad was working on Frame Trap just from social media. It's like,
really,
it's weird to, because I'm not in the loop, nor should I be, because I'm. They will message me when there are scripts to read, and there have been lots of. Somebody sent me there's a Pokemon gift I got to swing by the studio and pick up. Like I'm still in the loop, but it's super strange not to to kind of weigh in or plan, like you were saying, a lot of these big moves.
Right. So no chance you're going to jump back into Easy Allies now that Ben Moore jumped out? It's not going to be a quick hot swap?
That did not not change things.
Okay. Are you feeling...
and that would be one of my questions. Like, is somebody going to replace Ben? Because like Gabby didn't necessarily replace me because frankly, I'm irreplaceable now. She came in, as his community manager, this role that we didn't have, whereas like this does open up, a role for a writer, a role for a video producer. And so, but at the same time, like we, Easy Allies since its inception had like a pretty big team, and it was exciting because we had, people with all sorts of different interests. And so you'd have different shows and you never really know who, you were going to get. But at the same time, we had like a lot of people that were only really into one show or only really into like one or two allies and then was kind of tuned out of the rest of it. And so I think, if you have a smaller crew, everyone kind of is a little more on the same page. You can kind of have like this, the content in general can all kind of sing the same tune. And so there were times where, in management, we would just be like, it wouldn't be terrible if if there were only like 5 of us or something, because it would just, we wouldn't be doing so much stuff. And because it can be tiring when your community expects, all of these very different things, kind of like a hometown buffet, of gaming content.
Yeah, totally. I mean, just like I got into Easy Allies from the podcast and just being a big fan of that, it was always like, you all messaged it well enough, but it was still confusing to be like something about tabletop, there's something about monsters, I honestly don't know what Frame Trap was. Like, there were just years where I'm like, I know there's a lot of other content, I'm just happy with this and I'll support them on Patreon and keep getting this. And then I found this Cup of Jones show, and that was genuinely great. Thank you for all those years of doing that.
But yeah, and you want to, we have surveys and they're just all over the place, because there's some people like, bring back that show, I don't like this show. And so when you have like 5%, having feelings about everything, it's tough to be like, there's really no clear way. We obviously need to move. And so it's anytime we would make a decision, it was like, well, here, look at all these people we're going to upset because we know that they're into this one thing, but it just logistically doesn't make sense to keep doing anymore. Do I miss making those decisions? I do not.
Okay. I'm sorry to drag you back into all these discussions and all these stressful things. No, you can't breathe a sigh of relief. You have to come back and think about this stuff. Because I was thinking a lot about it. I think you're right. It's just Easy Allies is and was doing so many different things that just as a fan of like certain shows, it is inconceivable, and it leads, I think, to easy arguments amongst the community of like, well, clearly they should be doing this. Clearly they should be doing this.
Right.
And I would read so many of those posts like on Reddit of like, here's what Easy Allies' problem is. They should be doing this. And then 2 days later, actually, they should be doing this. And it's all just like these different points of view on the content, which is fascinating. And then the only solace I can give everybody in that community is like, well, that's just a sign of success. That is a sign that you all have made it, where you've built up that community to that point where there's enough viewpoints for people to even be shouting about this. Like, it's a sad state of affairs on the internet, but like, it is true that the ultimate sign of success is when you have people with so many different opinions and voices that arguments can break out and you can start screaming at Sony to release the God of War release date, Like, that's the marker of success, I guess.
Or when somebody said, I want this thing that you did, it was like, oh, I'm not going to go back and do that. That was not be something we delivered, but it's good to know that did make an impact, or we did, as a content creator, you want to make stuff that resonates, at least with somebody. Got to admit, though, it has like one, I am starting to, maybe not agree with a lot of the criticisms that we got over the years, but understand just this outside perspective about really not knowing the day to day. If I really wanted to, I could dig into the meeting notes and stuff, but it's just, I just kind of watch all that stuff breeze by. And one was, it's getting near the end of June and I'm like, haven't gotten a review script in a while. It's like, it feels kind of weird, and then I've got Turtles from Huber and I was like, oh, okay. And I'm thinking about it. It's like, well, I haven't got a review script. I'm like, oh, it's June. Like, of course, because just all these events happening and all the, and so that not only involves the planning of it, but the actual attending of it, and then the discussion afterward, and then all these demos and, all this stuff gets announced because Keeley will shadow drop something or something will come out a week later. And so it's like, I understand kind of how the confusion of being on the outside and looking in and just like, what are they doing? Why aren't they making these decisions? Because it's just so hard to really understand the fatigue, just the week after week after week.
I think that's really interesting. I do think it's helpful to have that perspective. Yeah, just from the outside and realize you'll care about a certain thing. It's more about just, I support them on Patreon for a matter of goodwill and a tip of the cap more than needing to be glued in at all times. But it's such a challenge in the Patreon world to message everything you're doing. It's like, I feel bad on the MinnMax Show podcast when I like spend a couple minutes at the end talking about plugs, because it just feels, I feel like an auctioneer running through all this stuff. Like, okay, I could walk through all these tiers and here's all the different shows. And it's like, who is this for? I need to just like pick one thing and push that maybe at a time. But there's no great way to communicate exactly what's going on within a community. And it turns out a vast majority of people supporting anybody on Patreon, they're not interested in the day-to-day, second-by-second breakdown of everything that's going on. They just say, yeah, I like this show. That's good enough for me. Keep on doing what you're doing.
Well, I have that $100 tier, and there's some people that, a tier above that that I'll get, email at the end of the month where they're like, oh, wait, that's right. I can get you to read something. Here's a poem.
Yep.
So sure, I'll do it.
It's you want an engaged community, but they can only be so engaged. You have to just learn that,
Oh, of course. Yes, life. I had one person that tweeted at me that they were like, when Ben, said that he was leaving, it was like, wow, he's like first Bossman and now Ben. Well, at least Jones is still there. Wait, what the fuck?
Right? No, totally.
DMs me like, I completely missed this, man. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's why it was really fascinating listening to Cup of Jones, because I think I told you this when you gracefully joined us for the deepest dive on Batman Arkham Asylum on MinnMax here, which was a great time. But it really feels like you were like our cool younger uncles over there at Easy Allies. And like listening to Cup of Jones, it was just fascinating to be like, okay, yeah, what is this life going to be like 6 years in? Like, what are going to be the community challenges? What are the messaging challenges? And so it was fascinating just to listen to every episode of Cup of Jones and hearing what you're frustrated with and then trying to chart out MinnMax's course to be like, okay, how can we learn from Big Papa Jones here and try and maybe, I don't know, avoid some mistakes here and there or some frustrations. So thank you for being so open, I think, with just the challenges of the Patreon lifestyle over there on Cup of Jones.
But a good example of the cloudiness of like content creation is that like, what was that show? Like that started out of me being like, literally I'm answering questions. And then I was like, oh, episode should maybe be different. So I'll do an editorial, but then I didn't do one for a long time. And then it was really like the last like 12, 13, 14 months, I committed to like every week I'm going to have some sort of theme that I'm going to talk about. Right. Like Blood would ask me like, what's this episode called? I'm like, I don't know, So it was a show that, we wanted to exist because I was like the editor in chief, even though we were all like, directly in control of something. Right. And so it was just kind of like having that ambassadorship, just that kind of like somebody communicating like, here's what this week was generally like. But, who knows? Who knows what any of these crazy shows we make are? Yeah, really?
Who really knows? The community knows. From their vantage point, they know what it is, even if we don't from the inside of the hornet's nest of content. I think you did a really great job when you were signing off from Easy Allies in general of like, you had so much content, those Cup of Jones that were marathon length of you walking through your entire career. It was fascinating. I mean, some of those were like multiple hours just of you monologuing and walking through everything. It was amazing. Yeah. Was that like a mission of yours? It's like, all right, let's just get it all down here so my entire history is someplace.
Well, thank God for the community, because I think Bloodworth messaged me. He was just like, you forgot Ray. And I'm like, Ray, no. You try to remember so many people that came and went. Well, that history was nice to go through because still I saw somebody, saying that when Ben left, somebody expressed the frustration that they're like, I give you guys Patreon money. Why are people not able to sustain their jobs here? And you're just like, I get that can be frustrating, but it's life, like who knows? And so it was important to me to express, like, I can't tell you how many people I've worked with that just came into Game Trailers or Easy, before we even started Easy Allies, and then gone, 8 months later. And I just got into the habit of being like, okay, great, awesome. Elise Willems, who was the last people that left, we were at Game Trailers, over to Funhouse. It was like, yes, this is clearly such a better place for you to do all the things. Like you can't look at the last, 7 years of stuff that she's produced over there, all the hilarious stuff she's doing, and not be like, this is exactly, where she should be. It sucks. And I get it. Even the shakeups at Giant Bomb recently, like all that stuff, like, no, like you want to preserve stuff. You want to, I was obsessed with that when I was in high school. I'm a big fan of Disneyland. Anytime like a ride closed down and it changed something, I'm like, nah, like write petitions, because you want to have some things that are sacred and don't change. And that just, that's entropy. It's gonna shift.
Yeah, it is. You're right. I mean, the older you get, the more you realize that, it's always shaking up. It's always changing. I feel like every once in a while in the game industry, you feel like, oh my God, everyone's leaving different publishers and going to different game studios. It's like, no. There's no big trends here. It's just things are always shifting, and it's a miracle when there's some place that's relatively steady, or a voice or a podcast that's been going on for so long. Like, change is the default. Everybody is kind of got to get up to speed on that.
But it's nice to have a community too when you do all of this, like, retrospective look at your career, because they offer stuff like, oh God, that's right. I did that. I completely forgot.
Right.
That was the thing that happened, because it's like you have big projects, you have weekly commitments, and then you're live a lot. And so like weird jokes happen, or weird memories. That's, it's it's funny at the moment, but it's just crazy to hear years later where somebody's like, that was either my entry point to Easy Allies, or that was the funniest thing I've ever seen you do, or my favorite thing.
In your retirement age here, have you had a moment of kind of, I don't know, sipping some scotch and going back and watching old clips? Have you gotten nostalgic about your games journalism career, even though it's only been a couple of months?
Well, dude, that's like the sad part is that like most of it's gone. I mean, the way that, the non-archiving that happened at Viacom and Defy Media, just so much stuff we did was on owned servers and not up on YouTube. And so it's just like, there were a couple moments where I was like, oh, let me see if I can dig up. No. Okay. Just like, oh, I remember when I did that. Nope. Gone. Or somebody, would message me and it's like, what I really liked was that one show that you did. Do you have a clip of that? I'm like, I do not, and it seems so, on one hand I can think like, oh man, why didn't I back that up? On the other hand, we're talking about, hundreds of hours of stuff, of junk, old reviews and full shows, that I produced that just, are just gone with the wind. And so I wish I could, sit back and I'm sure my wife would love it if I would just kind of kick back and I was like, oh, it's time for Milo to eat lunch. Okay, good luck with that, huh? But have not, no, you slipped into the role of dad, because she's, working all over the place. She's got like so many VO gigs for cool video games. I wish I could plug here, but just can't talk about. So yeah, she supported me. I mean, all of these wacko allies lived practically with her for like almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to kind of air that out and have me kind of lean, her lean on me a little bit in terms of like, this thing just came up. Can you just watch him all day? And I'm like, happily. That'd be great. Right. Let's watch some Bluey. Let's do it.
What would you think about, this is really diving in the weeds, so I apologize to everybody who's confused about any of the things that we're talking about here, but the nostalgia over the garage within the Easy Allies community was one of the most fascinating things, because it's like this big build-up, triumphant moment of like, we're getting the studio, and from what I can tell, that studio looks amazing, technical powerhouse, thanks to Isla and the entire team over there and whatnot. But every once in a while, would be those comments where it's like, I really miss the garage. And I'm not pointing fingers and judging this person in a mean way, but it was just, I saw one comment once that horrified me. Just as a content creator, this isn't going to read as horrifying to anybody else, but it was really just like, oh, this is such a good way to crystallize the internet. Is I saw one person where they said, I think that the Easy Allies made a mistake in not decorating the new studio to look like the garage. And It was like a sincere thing. And I was like, that is such a bizarre perspective.
I love Wayne's World. It was very important to me when I was growing up. And it's kind of like that, it's like, excellent, with like the logo going, and they're like, what? And he's just like, party on, Garth. And like, I guess, they're like in this weird, kind of stereo version of like, the basement. But like, yeah, it's that weird coin flip of like us. I was surprised actually when we first kicked it off and they were like, no, let's have it here. And I was like, oh, can we fit everything in here?
Yeah.
And like,
yeah.
Before we even like painted the wall to be any kind of like pleasant color for the lighting and everything. And, before we even like kind of moved the camera in the corner and realized like, oh, that's just, a much more interesting angle. I think there's just the joy of, I think people underestimate how much people want to be in their house, and how much messiness can kind of make you feel like, well, one example is we have, the Easy Allies continues to have this community showcase they do every month where people, contribute all this stuff. And, you'd have like one guy, shout out to Adam Henschel, who plays guitar. And so he'd be like jamming and like the cloud poster would be gone. And I'm like, where'd the cloud poster go? Or just something in the background, or it'd be like, oh, look, he's a Raiders fan, just like all these little details that you can pick, from people. And so, yeah, I think that has, we like to pretend that we're adding all the character, to the lens, but the background tells the story as well. And so it was just a vibe. It was a whole character.
Yeah.
So I get it, but we were very happy to get the hell out of there. We definitely upgraded houses. There's no question, but it's still there. It's still, I don't know. I haven't seen the interior, but every now and then I'll be in the neighborhood and like swing on by. Okay,
oh, really?
There's still a building in the back.
Do you think the new owners of that house have any idea of how much content was made in that garage?
there was a weird familial connection, like not familial, but like they were it was a grandson of like a woman that my mom knew or something. And it was just like, I told her the last name and she was like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm like, Mom, how many people do you know? That's crazy. They're like, the grandchild of the grandmother of the guy who bought my house. But I mean, how could you? They're just all the craziness, the debauchery. I think the big thing that I missed was that like living there were so many things I was involved in just because I was there. And like one opportunity was, I don't know if like Mother 1 and Mother 2 are like really my jam. Like I do like a good comedy RPG, just a comedy game in general, but like it's so obtuse. Like you really got to read a guide and you really got to know, like the kind of the HUD was bizarre, but Bloodworth played both of those all the way through. And so I would just be on my laptop in the background, just like, whoa, so it was neat to kind of like hang out like Kramer in the background while he was going through those, just because I'm like, this is my office. You're playing these, at my house. And so that definitely stopped when we went into the studio. I'm like, I'm only here. That might be like one show wedged in between two other shoots that I would do. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I got lunch, so I guess I'll just hang out. But
yeah, I still think like the group streams that happen in Easy Allies are always amazing. Like, oh my God, I'm jealous of everybody getting together on a pretty regular basis for big reactions and stuff like that. I felt like, when you marched back into the studio finally, it's like, oh, it is nice, it turns out, to get away from this remote era. That
was a trip. Ben was getting the Resident Evil 7 DLC news from the Easy Allies reaction. Like I was like, okay, I missed all this stuff. Let me go and check and see what happened. And saw that and was like, oh, I wonder if that was like brought up in the podcast. I'm like, oh, the reaction. Okay. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Like I made it. Like I'm here. I'm a fan. I'm sitting at home, and watching these people who I love, watch this thing for the first time that I've never seen, and I don't know how they're going to react to it. And Isla and Huber are there, which are the two people that need to be there. They have the most stake in like how quality this content's going to be.
Yeah,
so that was fun.
Are you kind of just relishing the idea of disconnecting? Do you feel like down the road you'd ever plug back in, not creating content for Easy Allies, but like consuming all the podcasts, consuming more streams? Do you think you would become more of a fan from the outside moving into the future?
Sure. Yeah, I think that'll definitely be, I'm just so gung ho to like, I think more than anything, just kind of prove to my wife that I'm not like, the stay at home slacker dad, just kind of like, the kid's napping, I'm going to go, also take a nap or, not work. So I'm like a little hyper in kind of like writing and, like taking this class and doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I used to do a lot of theater, and I still like will go see a play every now and then, not since COVID started, but like, I would go see a production of something and like there'd be that little kind of twinge where I'm just like, oh God, I want to get it back up on that stage. Right. It's just like, oh God, I want it, like the Tonys will happen. And it's like, oh, I don't know what is nominated this year, but I am kind of curious, and so, yeah, I'm sure that'll never go away because it's just such it's an exciting industry. And especially June, like retiring right before June and having just this month that was just has been a gauntlet for 20 years. We Game Trailer started the day of E3 2002 in May. And so just having that breeze by, having like checking Twitter and they're like Xbox. I'm like, what did Xbox do today? Oh, it's press conference. So like, okay, let's see what's up. Like that was bizarre. I mean, that was like right out of college, we made GT. So that was just like, there's been no part of my professional life that I wasn't just like hanging on like anything these major companies did.
Right. Yeah. Talking about the origins of game trailers that you did on Cup of Jones, fascinating to hear that this is just an era where, I mean, you basically made your career just by ripping videos from IGN and GameSpot. And then you turned that into a lot of money and a whole career. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I think that's one thing that makes me proud looking back is that just like it was never the same year. Like there was no 2 years where we just like, well, let's just do that again. Like,
right.
I think even like working, with Keeley on the stuff that he does when we did like All Access, when like Trenton was still there, at Sony and like I remember Last of Us when that like the year that came out right before E3, like that was like one of like the huge years where I was just looking around like, wow, there are a lot of hands on deck, in producing this content. So even like seeing what he's doing now, I can kind of visualize what it would be like behind the scenes because we were doing that. But that was even just like 3 or 4 years, you know, and the years before that, the years after that, like everything just changed so much, you know, like we were saying, even just the personnel, you know, like so many people came and went that it's like, I liked that I wasn't, you know, in a rut in terms of kind of like creating the same, you know, exact stuff, or like looking back on the past 365 days and being like, man, we're just, you know, kind of doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, but just listening to your version of the history of game trailers, it felt like it was a lot of not being in the same rut because you were kind of getting dicked around by corporations and the game trailers brand was evolving so fast. Like I felt so frustrated with you just telling that story, thinking about how frustrating it would be to found this thing and then it just gets yanked away from you and is zigzagging through history and you're just trying to keep up. I mean, was it frustrating to try and wrestle control of game trailers throughout its history?
I mean, there was, we just handed that thing over in 2007 or whenever.
Okay, so at that point, it's like, give me my money and I'll still be here, but I'm not going to be stressed about the direction of this thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, shout out to Brad Winters, who managed game trailers for so many years. And it was just, you know, we would, I really feel sorry for Shane because you could like see it on his face. You could see the, like, I fought, you know, like I really screamed at him, you know, because I was like, what are you doing? I think one of the worst, I don't know if I really went into it, but we did, you know, we had countdowns all the time, but we never did like just the top 10 best games. And MTV came in, they're like, we want to sponsor this. And we were like, oh, great. We'll do the top 10, you know, we'll do the top 10 best and the top 10 worst. And they just came in and just totally changed our top 10 best. And we're like, wait a minute. You know, it's like, why are we even here? Like, why even like put our name on it? And so, there were a lot of, it was very strange. Like, let's do stuff for the kids and then let's get the kids to come and create the content for the kids. And then we'll change the content. It's like, why did you hire us to do the thing? But I mean, that is entertainment. I mean, that's why it was so refreshing to with all the mistakes we made and all the stuff we got right the last 6 years with DC Allies, to just branch out and like get to do whatever we wanted to do, you know, and learn those lessons from the people directly that we were making the content for. Because I mean, we were just yelling into the void so many times, you know, and especially, you know, with YouTube, which I think was like the main killer of just like, and the worst, Hanson, is the email that we got from like Viacom Corporate where they're like, good news, everybody. You know, it was like George Bush being like on the
mission accomplished,
just like mission accomplished. You know, they were like, we have finished the lawsuit with YouTube. We're just like,
wait, what was this? What is the lawsuit with YouTube? What was this whole thing?
I think it was just like over like South Park and other stuff where YouTube, people were just posting clips on YouTube. And so rather than go after these content creators or these channels, they like went after YouTube and they were like, how dare you steal our content? And so they like sued YouTube, and, you know, I would give you more details if I honestly cared. All I knew how it trickled down to us is they were like, you can't, like, none of our channels will have YouTube channels. And like Comedy Central didn't care because they had a network, but we were like, our network is the internet. And so we couldn't have youtube.com/game trailers. We owned it, but like we couldn't post anything there. And it was just like pulling teeth, like, please let us get stuff. And so by the time we finally got that up and rolling, and a lot of the people, frankly, just like left and retired, and new people came in and we're like, wait, why don't we have a YouTube channel? That's stupid. And we're like, no, we've been saying. And so they're like, okay, well, yeah, let's build up our community. And Machinima's like, what community? It's ours. You know, like you guys weren't around. And so we, you know, and so, we had to play catch up for a long time. And then it just wasn't enough. Too little, too late.
Yeah. No wonder you're enjoying your retirement. It sounds so much better than just being in the cesspool of corporate greed.
Yeah, EZA was its own version of retirement, you know. I mean, that was I wasn't when Game Trailers folded, I felt bad. I wasn't looking forward to telling my employees, but I mean, I wasn't like, what? You know, right. It's like, of course, okay, you know, it's today. All right, let's do it. Let's pack it up.
Yeah, it's a nice reminder that I think I've been very spoiled with my career, because GameStop was so, for us anyway, on the ground floor, so hands off with Game Informer. I mean, we had a ridiculous amount of freedom, and then just hearing glimpses from other companies, just like, oh, what was happening over there at Game Trailers? Like, I think the more, if we would have known more, we would have appreciated even more of like how special Game Informer was for being so separate, until it occasionally isn't, and there's a lightning bolt from hell, which is GameStop, you know, but it was a real luxury.
Yeah, you can still see a little bit of that with, you know, like your Twitches and your YouTubes, like not knowing really how to handle content creators. You know, they have all these singular celebrities, and like there's reports all over of them just like they're not helping us. Like they're not, like we're not making as much money as we used to. And it's just, it's always just a really frustrating relationship between the platform holders, the people that manage, the place where you get to distribute your content, and these people who are making the content that you can't make because all you're doing is running servers, and so it's just, it should be a beautifully symbiotic relationship, but it's just like, it's just hard to, plus then there's community, which doesn't get listened to either most of the time. So it's like,
Yeesh. Hey, have you ever thought about how many people in the world have heard your voice? Think of how many videos you've done the VO for, how many reviews out there. If you had to ballpark it, what do you think that number is?
Oh, I hope it's over 1,000. Yeah, it's probably a couple thou. Because it's like each year, it would be like close to 100.
No, what are we doing? I mean, those reviews, millions of views for game trailers, right? I have to imagine.
If only Rich Brown and Daniel Kaiser hadn't, creeped up on, shout out to them, because they, when I was like on my honeymoon and, I'd be like on location or sick or something. And so they would step in and, read a review here and there. But I almost had them all.
Do you think like that 100 million different people on Earth have heard your voice?
That'd be nice.
Do you think? It's got to be close to that, don't you think?
What am I going to do with that information, Hanson?
Just think, it's weird. I don't know. It's just a weird thing for you to think about and lose sleep about.
It is very strange. I think the main thing that I think about was, I like kind of cherished that anonymity. I remember when Keeley came on, everyone thought Keeley voiced the reviews, or they thought like I wrote all of them.
Right.
And so it kind of cracked me up, like, oh yeah, I get to like make all these weird, videos, and then like on the side, do this stuff, and then, like they move the booth into my office, and so I was just like, just sit in this room and just write weird scripts and read this stuff, and then like realize later, like we all have to be on camera. It's like if you are a part of a channel, like you got to be, even if you're like behind the scenes, like somebody's going to turn a camera on you eventually. And I was like, I probably should have gone out and in front of the camera a little bit earlier, because there definitely was that like, scramble. Like once, I kind of started to take center stage, where I was like, it's me. And everyone was like, who the fuck are you? like the guy, And then after 60 seconds of talking, they're like, who you sound like? It's like, yeah, we'll get there.
Jeff Keeley. Yeah. It's interesting hearing, I think it was like a Q&A after you left These the Allies. They were talking about their perspective on you during the game trailers era, and they said that you had the most amazing office ever, and they would get like glimpses at it, and it's like, oh, that's living the life, is sitting in that sweet office there in game trailers.
I had, there were a couple years there. Thankfully, I knew how good I had it, but because that, once we sold, I mean, I had one of the guys I sold it with went straight into, like, I wouldn't say like executive level, but I mean, he was at conferences, and he was, in big boardrooms and making deals and stuff like that. Working, we worked with Spike for a long time. And so he like jumped ship to kind of working on Spike Network stuff. It's miserable. Like one day he just walked in my office. He's like, I quit. I'm out. And I was like, oh, like next week? He's like, today. I'm like, can we get lunch? He's like, no, I'm out. Like, okay, bye, high school friend, And so I, very much when I, after that big sale, it was like, I do not need a high profile job. I would just love to work here. And so it brings me great joy when I talk, and we talked a lot about this before I left, when the other allies were like, I didn't know who you were.
Right,
right. It was so confusing to kind of piece together, like, who is this guy? Where did he come from? What does he do? And like the last thing that they like surmised, like, oh, he started all this madness. Like, and he does via what? Like,
it's so weird.
It's crazy. Yeah. And to put like a price on my VO, because like, I'm married to this voice artist who's all, doing stuff all over the place. And
right.
Like, they couldn't afford me. Like if they literally tried to hire just a person to read all of those scripts, there's no way. It just wouldn't be worth it, For like a content creator now, it's like, well, my voice, my face is my brand, is my channel, and so I'm going to make all of this stuff. Whereas it's just like, oh, I'm doing a documentary, I need to hire a voice actor. It's like, oh, you got, 8 pages. That's, a couple grand or something. It's like, I'm going to be in the booth for a long time. Yeah. Whereas like that math was never done, like even now with what I'm making, as a freelancer for the company, is like still just, I just, lowballed him. I was just like, this is fine. Whatever.
Yeah. It turns out it's kind of fun.
It doesn't matter. I mean, I'm happy to just still be around and keep that number going up.
That's right.
In 20 years from now, Hanson, I want you to be, do you have any idea how many reviews you've done? I'm like, it's a lot.
Why not, man? It's interesting when you're running through the history of game trailers, you talked a little bit about not seeing the importance of personality and comedy in the videos at game trailers, like not realizing maybe like, oh, it turns out Elise and Isla, what they're doing is incredible, or what Kyle's doing over here is incredible, or like you appreciated it, but just in retrospect, it turns out, oh, that's what like stands the test of time.
That's where we're going. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's an interesting idea. And I'm fascinated by just looking back at, big sites and content creation, just figuring out what is going to stand the test of time, what is actually having an impact here. And you want to talk about that idea of just looking back in retrospect and what is elevated and what is, it turns out, trash for the daily grind?
I think Keeley's still kind of stuck on this, because I remember like Samuel Jackson, hosted the Spike Video Game Awards one year, and it's like, Sam is like one of the biggest celebrities in the world, but what? It also kind of doesn't make sense. Like, and so it's,
no one's going to talk about it. Yeah.
I think that was our mindset of we were just surrounded by like, well, you can't get on camera because you're not like an expert in the arena and you're not a massive celebrity. So like nobody wants to watch you. And when we first started creating content, before we got acquired by Viacom, it was like, let's make stuff we want to watch. And so we were looking at reviews at GameSpot, and they were like putting themselves on camera a lot. I'm like, well, I don't know who this person is. I just want to hear your opinion, and I want to look at the game. Why am I looking at you? And so we pushed away from that. And, it was a good call at the time. And I still think, you look at something like Vati Video, like there is a case to be made for, I'm just going to do voiceover and game footage, and you just watch this and hear me. And that is a genre now, where it's like, we thought like that should just be gaming content in general. And so, it was, because I do think it requires a bit of ego in a good way. Like you do want to think highly of yourself, to think, no, I'm putting good stuff out there. My opinions deserve to be heard. And I have a community that does like me and does want to hear stuff. And it's just like, it was, just not what we thought of ourselves when making all of that stuff. And so,
but it's weird to think too of like, the flip on the GameSpot end of the spectrum. Like, yeah, it's nice to have the full frame game footage, but I mean, seeing faces of like Greg Kasavin or seeing Gersman for those video reviews, like that really locked in a lot of people's attachment to those personalities and want to follow them through the industry. I mean, it is that weird idea. If they just would have gone full gameplay and not been on camera, would the Gersman momentum be lessened now by 5%?
We would have lost out on how many behind the scenes, silly looking images of Greg Miller that we can laugh at now. It's like, they would have been gone. We wouldn't have had that if it was all voiceover.
You're right. You're right.
And it just wasn't, because I'm a film major. And so it just wasn't me. It wasn't what I was like trained to do. It wasn't, I wanted to like write screenplays and direct. And so this idea of like putting myself, in front of, the gaming content it was weird. And it's interesting that you bring up Isla and Elise and Kyle, because that's, when I went to school, those were the like groundlings types, those were the budding Saturday Night Live writers, these were people who were just, I instantly recognized upon meeting them, I am just not funny as you. Like my brain doesn't think that way.
Yeah.
And so like I have, it's like you were saying with, the last Cup of Joneses that I did, that like, just kind of knee jerk ability to just like, oh, look, 2.5 hours went by. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Like I can do that. Like that's something that I know I feel comfortable doing, where, I remember when they would have writers' room meetings for Mandatory Update and think up jokes. And I was just like, man, sitting in a room with a pad of paper and trying to think up a joke sounds just like hell. Like that just, how do you know, and hearing like how The Onion operates, how like you'll have a whole room full of people and somebody will be like, hey, I thought of this joke last night. And then you say the joke and everyone just kind of stares at you and they're like, no. And you're just like, you gotta just move on. You gotta just accept it didn't play, and you gotta just, okay.
It's for the greater good, I guess. The hive mind knows. Yeah. But that is just fascinating to think of that idea of, well, Samuel L. Jackson, that's going to be a great moment on TV or on this site. And then it turns out nobody cares or remembers this cameo from a big star. Whereas some joke that Kyle Bossman made, that will stick with somebody in an impactful way and make them a fan of his for life.
Even like self-deprecating stuff. Like I could, my last Game Awards that I went to, it was like Will Arnett and Ashley Birch came out on stage. And it was just like the crickets, it's just like, it's like these two people are geniuses and this is just not working.
And Ashley Birch, should be there.
Because there's just this like super stiff, and so it's a weird industry that I just love so much, because it's it's ready for the big time, but it can't do it the way all of these other industries have done it over the years. Even like the Oscars is struggling, you know, in terms of like making it relevant, you know, making the awards mean something and making, you know, the show actually entertaining and have a lot of people watch it. And so, it's just a different way to do things.
Different way to do things. Speaking of different way to do things, you made some reference in that era about how you went to the Playboy Mansion. What was this? Twice. What a weird time and a place.
Made no sense. Made no sense.
No.
Because it was MTV and they had, you know, there was like some reality show they were doing at the time, or there was something, I think it was like a part of that clout, you know, it was just like, oh, well, this makes sense. So let's make this happen. And of course, like we weren't critical of like, I don't know if that fits our brand. We were like, give me that ticket.
That seems like a silly, dumb thing to do. Was it cool in any way, or was it just deeply uncomfortable?
It was extremely cool.
Damn it! I was hoping you wouldn't say that. It was
free booze and just. I think that's like the most intoxicated I've seen coworkers. I've seen celebrities. Okay. I remember Jeff Grotz, who I started the site with. You know, got a inebriated David Jaffe, who, you know what he's like when he's sober. Yeah. You know, you can imagine, you know, David Jaffe after a couple, and he basically all but confirmed God of War 2. He was like, well, it's gonna happen. You know, he's like, we haven't really started on it yet. And then like, you know, like some Sony exec just like tackled my buddy Jeff after and was like, I know the cameras were rolling. I should have said something while it happened, but like, you absolutely cannot post that. And Jeff's like, we're posting it. There's that, you know, I remember that being a big, you know, kerfuffle that had nothing to do with, but just like looking down into the pool, and like one of our like, you know, production managers is just like, you know, up to his waist, like, what's up in the pool? I'm like, hey, guy who's kind of my boss, guy who kind of tells me what to do.
Weird. What a
just
weird
absolutely having a blast. But I think part of the reason it was fun is we were, you know, I think I knew at the time, like, I don't know if we're coming back next year. We did for like a totally separate event, but didn't get to meet Hef, but I did see him just like passing by.
Really? Because he wanted to learn more about God of War 2?
And he was trying to, you know, get into that interview. We're like, back off, Hef. It's David Jaffe, man. Come on, show some respect.
What a weird thing.
But, does he even know what party? I mean, obviously, you know, he's long past, but like at the time, like, did he even know it was a video game event? I don't know. You know,
no.
He just come downstairs and just like, what's this?
Do you think? And this is what I brought you on here to talk about. Do you think Hugh Hefner was happy? Scale of 1 to 10. How happy do you think that dude was, day to day?
I don't think you know, any 2 days that man lived were like any of the other days. I just think it's like Willy Wonka, you know. It's like you watch Willy Wonka and you can see the sadness, you can see the desperation of just what is my legacy? How does this pass on?
Yeah, I'm sick of schnozberries. Yeah, I think it's all the same thing.
Yeah, too much of a good thing potentially. What is pleasure at that point? You know, like where do I go to seek that? You know, what ice cream flavor really surprises me at this point?
Is that what it's like to run a Patreon for 6 years? Is too much pleasure and too much of just like, I am swimming and being thankful to this community for 6 years, but at a certain point, it's doing a lot for my mental well-being to be in servitude to a 3-year-old right now. It's like, it's really humbling, you know. It's just things got too good, and I wanted to, you know, to pick it up. It is weird to go from, you know, you have to keep 9,000 people on Patreon happy over there for Easy Allies versus now you just got to keep 2 people happy, really, just your wife and your kid. That seems much better.
You're really working me toward our patrons of 3-year-olds comparison, which I'm going to try to avoid at all costs.
Only that one about they said they should design the studio to look like the garage. That's the
hypothetical shit versus literal shit. I'm sure there's a connection we can make.
I'm not going to make that connection though. I appreciate it though. I think that after all those years at Easy Allies, you still were able to be very thankful to the community, and I was appreciative both as a fan and also as a content creator, the idea of like, okay, it's nice that you weren't getting jaded after these years. It's nice that it's still here's what I'm trying to say. It's nice that like the gratitude is still fresh after 6 years. Cause it is. I mean, even now after MinnMax, 2.5 years, something like that, that still, I'll have to pinch myself just to realize like, it is wild that this thing is hovering, that this thing is flying, that people are still jumping in. Because as you know, it's wild to like look at the numbers and there's so much churn and people drop out every day and somehow new people come in. And it's just a weird thing you have to get used to. They're like, oh no, It turns out when the platform's going up and down real fast, it feels stable. And you lived that for 6 years. It's such a wild thing. And I appreciated that you were able to keep it in perspective.
Well, it's really helping me now because like when we started Game Trailers, what is cocky 20-year-olds like fresh out of college, just like, how can we make, something really big, and we were like so quick to sell it, so quick to like seek buyers and, try to we were so aggressive against like IGN and GameSpot. We were just like, we're going to take them down, not really take them down, like look at them scramble, look at, they're changing their review format to fit our stuff and like they're hosting more trailers but they went HD, blah, blah. But, when, as I'm sure you have realized and feel on the best days, when you create something and have this dialogue, have an experience directly with your fans and it's enough to sustain yourself. It's like, yes, obviously to have like tremendous success would be super great. It'd be awesome to just have something, to just like, 7 figures just came rolling in the door. But it really helped redefine kind of finding a satisfaction in content creation and being in the entertainment industry. And so now that I'm like going to try to sell a book or two, this year or next year, it's like, if I can just find people who like my voice, the writing voice, people who are like, oh, I like that. I would look forward to another thing you would write or would look forward to a sequel to a book or something. Then it's not like, oh, I only sold how much? It's like, cool. These people read it. These are like my new, not like new friends technically, but like, a community that I can communicate with and I can build, and just the value in that, as someone who saw that the concept of value, change, drastically over the years. That's just great. And it's something that has really helped kind of bring me down to earth in terms of like what I want for the next stage of this career. Yeah.
Couldn't you have just, made a text post on Patreon and written a beautiful fiction story? And then it is not conceivable that you would have gotten, you would have gotten so much positive feedback from a community directly. Like why go searching into new waters for some sort of book community? I don't know. It seems tough.
Oh, it's just, it's just time. It's just like, even now with, it's like prepping to retire and I was like, oh, it's gonna be great. I'm gonna have so much time. And then my son was in, the hospital for 9 weeks. And so it's like, okay, like a good hour and a half of each day is just like, let's get our meds out and let's try, fix that. Like just this morning we took him in. Thankfully we didn't have to go in for 3 weeks, but we were, at the hospital today for 2.5 hours, just talking about his, condition and everything. So a little less time in my retirement than I thought I would have. But it just, creatively, like these were, ideas that I would have, these are like, I got, movies I want to make, I got books I want to write, but I can't, hosting a podcast every week, having some, Nintendo being like, hey, direct tomorrow. And you're like, okay, that was when I was going to write, but let's go, to have just not a lot of control because the industry is such a tornado, to kind of like have more, like I have most mornings, to sit down and, when I'm not playing Final Fantasy 14, to just really, I just read a book about writing and it's like kind of depressing because this gal who, passed in like 1980 something was like, the harsh news is as a creative writer, you really got to sit at your desk for like 3 hours and not do anything. Taika Waititi just I saw a meme of him where he's like, yeah, I'll just stare at my computer and stare at a blank final draft page for half a day and then just close my laptop. Like, yep. Damn, and that's just like, you can't force that stuff. And so those windows were so small of me, and like you said, I was still, I did a show that I was really proud of in the last couple of years called Mindful Games. So it just like spoke to like how much I loved meditation. And like, that was a totally different writing format. So there are like tons of examples for me to kind of step out of, whatever mold, I thought I, might've been stuck in or worked, and do a different type of show. And so, but just none of that was like narrative. It was like, here's a character in a fictional world that is doing things, here's dialogue. And, it's like, that's a very different beast. Yeah. And it just takes time.
Yeah. And you feel like you're finally going to scratch that itch. You feel like you're on the right path for finally checking some things off the old list.
I am not hyping it up at all because there's not, the work is not finished, but, hopefully I got enough people that's why I'm keeping in the VO biz. So people can be like, oh, that voice guy wrote a book. Okay. They're not like 8 months from now. Because the joke, which I appreciate, after Kyle left, whenever his name would be uttered on a stream or something like that, just, chat would just be overflowing with who? Sorry, what? Who?
Right.
And then like the first like stream I came back, it's like, oh, is this intern? Is this like one of the new? And it's like, love those digs. It's so good, so humbling, so refreshing. And so it's like, yeah, you gotta fight for relevance, gotta get, some projects back and under people's eyeballs. And, yeah, I think really now looking back at like, the access that I had in in gaming was really great, like getting codes, going to events, meeting all sorts of crazy people. Obviously, the sale was nice, got a house with that, appreciate it. And obviously like getting a paycheck every month, but just the community is like, I truly feel rich, like having all of those people, have my back and, having, still communicating with them about all this stuff and reaching out to people on an individual basis. It's just like, yeah, that is something I cannot be without, even though I have moved on in some respects.
Yeah. And when you made your big announcement, you felt like you're able to feel all that love online. It wasn't just in one eye, out the other. That's not the right way to phrase it.
That sounds painful. And yeah, and it's a gift that keeps on giving. Because like I said, there's still some people like, huh? They're like, every now and then they'll reply like, oh man, sorry, I was just out of the country and I just came back and you're gone, Yeah. So it feels like a long time. It doesn't fit, and so I know it feels like a long time for you because you've been trying to get me week after week on this thing.
I've been busy. Whatever.
I loved, you're just like a shark. You were right on me. You're just like, all right, next week, come on. And I was like, well, yeah, we'll see if we have time. And then, yeah, you got married and it's like I did not get back to you. And I just love that first message. Like, so we gonna do this or what? I was like, oh, right.
Turns out people want to hear from you and figure out what's going on in your life these days. When you said you were leaving, the analogy that I kept thinking of was just like the moment in Forrest Gump, everybody's favorite film, when he's running across the country and then he just stops running. And he's just like, I think I'm going to go home now. I think about that. Like, that's what I think it's like as a content creator, is like just to hit that moment of like, well, now I guess goodbye. Is that what it felt like?
Sure. I mean, well, it's that I've hit that point, that Forrest Gump, point at several moments. It was like when we first sold game trailers, it was that opportunity. It was like, oh, whoa, like I have a pretty good amount of success pretty early on in my career. Do I want to take this and make a movie with this money or what, Interesting. And like my dad was like, buy a house, like right now, Smart. I wish he would have told me to wait 3 years and then buy a house because the market crashed. But, and then, when we made the transition to Defy Media, I had a really honest conversation with all the people in the room, Elise was there and Matt Blair was there and, the people who weren't around Easy Allies. And I was like, I am seriously thinking about, going on to greener pastures and just like, counting my chickens and taking off. And they were like, we're kind of weighing, what to do. And so those were all situations, and Easy Allies as well. Like these are all opportunities. Like maybe now is the time. And I think there's something about, I don't know if you picked this up from like all of my stories, but like I actually like sprained my ankle while I was camping. And so I like came back, I'd like missed a weekend of stuff, and like some event like was confusing because I wasn't there to manage it. And like there was like a fire in like Northern California, and like all the heat like came in through the canyon we were in. And so like my son like got up in the middle of the night and was like, I'm hot. And we were like, oh, okay, buddy. Well, like let's pack up our car and go home. So I was like really tired the next day and my ankle hurt. And I was like, I don't know if I got the stamina for this anymore. I really felt like I was a little behind, and so I was like, okay, maybe it's time to like move on and maybe, do something else. It felt like that with Easy Allies. Like there was like, even though we were still doing gaming coverage, it felt totally different. And that was like so exciting, and a lot of people that, were around right at the time where we sold to MTV just took off and went on to do other things, because it's like when you get to a certain tier, when you get to a certain point of opportunity in your career, it's like, it's so enticing to just kind of like, even if you have to take a step down, so to speak, to do something else or not have as much recognition. It's like, yeah, but I'm doing something totally different. And, it's like, I'd never thought I would take a class again, but it's just like my first Zoom class where I was just like, oh, I love my classmates. This is great.
That's awesome.
And I'm learning so much.
I think that was like part of Bossman's goal, wasn't it? Is he wanted to go back to college? Has he done that? I don't think he has. Did you beat Bossman back to college? Is that what's going on here?
He could learn a thing or two. That's all I'm saying. Like Bossman, you know, he could. Yeah, he just kind of drifted into a lot of his opportunities, as far as I'm concerned. I think it's time for him. Somebody's got to give him a grade. This is basically where Bossman's at. Okay, you know, like he's flying by the seat of his pants, and somebody needs to give him the C- that he deserves.
That's right. For every delayed input video, if everybody as the comment could just leave a letter grade, and I think that'd be a nice way. Instead of mean YouTube comments out there, everyone just leave a letter grade.
Thumbs up, thumbs down doesn't quite cut it. If we could literally just, you know, maybe we can color code it. No, I remember sitting at the breakfast table when Kyle called me and was like, yeah, I'm leaving in a couple months. And like, just immediately I was like, cool. You know, like I'm excited to see what you do. And he's super good. I played, you know, Final Fantasy 14 with Damiani the other day. I finally finished a Realm Reborn, like got into like the first like update content and going into the first expansion now. And he just joined in like a hot second, you know, and
that's cool.
And so it's neat to, you miss him, but then he builds this whole other community. And that's kind of what I hope to do. You know, we were talking about like, you know, getting back into, you know, things potentially, or, you know, still kind of hanging on and like being around and like, what do I want to be involved in? I would love to just like, again, find success and then take those resources, take that community and be like, have you heard about Easy Allies? You know, like bring people back. Like that's kind of one of my new dreams, you know, it's just like, oof, I wish I could, it'd be nice to, you know, to leverage that and just kind of show appreciation for, you know, not only the allies that remain, but the community that literally paid the bills, like literally brought us up to where we are.
Yeah, just to make a bigger circle of love and respect ultimately.
Yeah, and because, you know, we try to get our brand out there. We try to, you know, get our feet in as many doors as possible, and, you know, our name out. And it just like, there's nothing it's so hard to do. There's so many different people out there making content, and it blows my mind where people, you know, are, you know, like, yeah, I heard about game trailers, but didn't that end? And they're just like, they've had a Patreon for like 6 years. Like, oh, okay, let's check that out. Like, how did this not, you know, had that not waft over into, you know,
everybody's busy and there's a lot of information going out. It's totally understandable that everything just drifts by. You know, like I had that moment when Jeff Green, I was a big fan of back for GFW and all that stuff, but he created a consulting company in like 2020, and he called it MinnMax Consulting. And it's just one of those things of like, damn it. I think that just means that, yeah, we are clearly still in a very small bubble. If like he thought, well, the name MinnMax is relatively unused, I'll go for that. And it's like, damn it. Well, that's fine. I guess he's cool. We can share that name ultimately.
I know the first time I heard about game theory, someone's like, oh, GT, game theory. And I was like,
oh, right.
What? And you're like, yeah, game theory. That's what GT is. And I was like, I created a website when that guy was in diapers. What? What in the, you know?
Whatever. Everyone's doing their own thing. You can't be mad about it.
Of course not.
Well, congratulations on forging a new path.
Thank you.
Trying some new things. I think that's pretty cool. And it's fun to write, you're saying?
Yeah, it's fun to start writing a book.
Okay.
And so once you get about halfway through, it's like, oh God.
Yeah.
But because I mean, just being in my first thing, it's like halfway through. I actually got a couple of books in the works, and it's like once I got to like chapter 9, I was like, oh well, now I know how to write. So I got 9 crappy chapters. Well, 8, because this one I'm writing, the chapter I'm writing right now is pretty good. So you just, you know, I was talking to other people. I'm like, should I go back? And they're like, just finish it. I'm like, it doesn't make sense though, because I'm like changing characters and stuff. And they're like, you just got to get it done, and then you will go back. And so it's just kind of that battle of attrition. You know, it's like I ran a couple half marathons, and you really have to just like, one foot in front of the other. Okay, Gatorade, thank you. All right. Because it just, you feel the inadequacy, you know, especially going from, you know, this kind of fight or flight, you know, content creation that, you know, you're very used to, of just like, okay, another day, that video's done. Okay, on to something else. And so just really kind of like going back to a project. All right, this character again. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
You can just, you're drenched in inferiority. Like,
well, it's so tough. I mean, I've heard it
just takes time.
Yeah, I've heard other people talk about that idea, which is really interesting about like, as you get older, you get a more refined taste. So therefore it's more challenging to create things because you know what you like from other writing. So therefore it's more challenging to create that. Whereas I don't know, when you're 19, how much a refined palate do you really have for literature? Where it's like, I don't know, I could write a book. Here we go. And that's all it takes to get the ball rolling. But then the door's closing more and more because it's like, well, you want to make a film? Turns out if all you've been doing is studying Nolan's films, you're going to have a tough time picking up a camera, buddy, you know?
And just, you know, there's so many things. I just, you know, finished Obi-Wan a couple weeks back.
Right.
And just like, I can't think that that's the show that was originally pitched. You know, there's like so many things. There's so many hands and ideas and, you know, creative interests that it's like, it's super exciting just being like mine.
Right.
Like I got for better or worse, this is my own little thing. And so when it goes out there, there's just like a name attached to it. And so it's neat to just, like kind of create a world. So I love open world games. You know, it's just fun to like inhabit a space, you know, and just really, you know, really see it from all angles. And so, hopefully they don't suck. You tell me, right?
Oh,
right,
yeah. I don't want to have to edit that book in any way, but yeah, I'll tell you if it sucks for sure. Before we let you go, how's the kid doing?
He's doing great.
Okay.
Yeah, it's stable. Like we might have, you know, more complications in the future, but it's tough because it's like you talk to doctors and it's like, well, this, that, or whatever, and then you hang out with the kid and like he's playing with, you know, Hot Wheels. He's having a great time, you know. And, he's very independent now. I'm super proud because he's kind of turned away from TV a little bit, you know, like he used to just demand like Sesame Street now. And now he's just we'll just, you know, I'll walk in and talk to my wife, like, where is he? She's like, he's been in his room just running a truck on his bed for the last like hour. And I'm like, good for him. You know, like
brain cells firing.
So yeah, good for him. He's boy, that kid, he redefined strength for me. Just whenever I get tired or think about something, I'm like, wait, nope, my son went through that nightmare. I can, you know, finish another chapter, or I can, you know, to do this other dumb thing that I got to do. So he's got to take like one of his meds as a shot that he's got to take. We got to give it to him every morning and night. Oh, so just 2 shots a day. 2 shots a day. No. You couldn't handle 2 shots a day.
Absolutely
I couldn't handle 2 shots a day.
I'd never stop crying.
And he just will kind of, you know, my man will be reading him a story. I'm like, oh, hey, buddy. And he's like, whatever. And we'll go back to the story. And it's like, seeing a 3-year-old like, yeah, sure. It's Tuesday. Give me a shot. It's like,
yeesh.
You're my hero. So,
well, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, in order of importance, Summer Game Fest, did you watch any trailers? Do you have any trailers that popped for you? Did anything cross your radar?
I mean, that was weird. Just completely getting out of the trailer game. I mean, it happened when I was in Easy Allies, you know, where I'm like, I'm not watching those as much. So no, it was, I got all of the announcements from other people's reactions of things. There was no video I watched that wasn't attached to an article or reaction or podcast or something. Like it was all just, so yeah, there's sadly no. Wow. I have a huge disappointment for coming from me. Oh, how times have changed.
Okay, but what if you can redeem everything with this? I assume you're like just neck deep into Disney Mirrorverse on mobile.
No, because I have been playing Galaxy of Heroes forever, and that's that gacha, you know, that Star Wars gacha, the original Star Wars gacha that premiered when I went to the Battlefront event, Battlefront 1. And they're like in the corner, they were like, oh, we also got this mobile game. And I was like, oh, what's that? And I'm like, a 6-party member Star Wars turn-based RPG? What the f? And like, so I've been, but even before Mirrorverse, there was some other Disney game where you could like see, it was like Sully and Mickey and all, you know.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, Disney burned me once. I ain't going back. After Infinity got canceled, I was like, all right, well, okay, fine.
Bold.
Just we'll see. We'll see if I invest in the next thing you do. So
even Dreamlight Valley, that Stardew Valley clone, not raising an eyebrow.
That hasn't come out yet, right? Or is that in early access?
It's early access in September, I think.
Okay, we'll see.
Okay, all right. Don't let us down, man. Even though you're retired, I want you to be enjoying the right types of games in your retirement. You need to still maintain your brand, even if you're out of the spotlight.
All it takes, I said with Fortnite, is I've never given that game. I put a lot of hours into Fortnite, never given them a penny. And then Indiana Jones came in. I was like, oh, shit. Okay. You got me.
Take everything,
Take my $10.
Please.
Okay. So who knows? It's just, it's got to be the right thing.
That's right.
I got to save those pennies for the 3-year-old, man. They got to, you know, they're not cheap.
That's it.
You got to, like the Hot Wheels are $1 a piece, but they add up.
Weird. Jones, it's nice to hear your voice. Thanks for checking in with the world.
It's really nice to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, nothing but love and respect to the whole MinnMax community.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a ton of crossover there with you know, with MinnMax and EZA, with all the peeps. And yeah, shout out to all of you, and I hope you have a wonderful gaming year. And I will be playing games. You just might not see me enough, but hopefully you'll hear me a little bit too.
There we go. Sweet. All right. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching or listening to this interview. There are plenty more like it in our playlist. If you enjoyed this one, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. And Jones, this is the part that you probably don't miss.
Sell it.
Or if you really want to help support it directly, see, I slip into sarcasm, and we were talking about being, you know, gracious and being filled with gratitude. So here we go. You can help support this content directly by going to patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. We appreciate it, everybody. All right. We'll see you next time. Bye. Did that feel sincere enough? Did I do it? Okay, yeah, I give it a 6, honestly. Videos like this are possible because MinnMax is a completely independent outlet for games supported solely by the community. The only reason we don't have to create condescending clickbait is because folks like you click on the subscribe button or check out the benefits over on patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. We think that we're the most efficient gaming outlet out there, so please take a look at what we've done and imagine what more we can do with your support.